Welcome back, Coinology. In the vast landscape of American currency, a single coin, small enough to slip unnoticed through the cracks of time, carries with it a story larger than most people could ever imagine. The year was 1988, a year that, for many, marked ordinary moments of American life. But hidden within the presses of the U.S. Mint, a tiny round disc of copper and zinc was being born, a coin that would one day ignite fascination, mystery, and unimaginable value. This was the 1988 1-cent coin, the humble penny, carrying the face of Abraham Lincoln and the quiet weight of American history. The penny had always been more than just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of endurance, a token of the nation's evolution from its earliest struggles to its industrial strength. The 1988 cent, though seemingly ordinary at first glance, became part of a lineage that stretched back to 1909, when the first Lincoln cent was struck to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. From that moment, the Lincoln design had never left American pockets, but the 1988 penny carried something unique. The composition of this coin was no longer pure copper. Starting in 1982, the U.S. Mint had shifted to a copper-plated zinc composition, a thin layer of copper covering a core made primarily of zinc. The new penny weighed 2.5 grams, lighter than its copper predecessors, which weighed 3.11 grams. To the average eye, the difference was invisible. But to collectors, metallurgists, and historians, it marked a turning point, the moment when the penny became a reflection of changing times, rising costs, and economic adaptation. Every 1988 1-cent coin bore the image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse side, his gaze steady, his expression calm but resolute, the face of a leader whose legacy defined the very meaning of unity. On the reverse, the design depicted the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., a structure that mirrored the ideals of democracy and remembrance. The initials FG, for Frank Gasparo, rested subtly beneath the memorial, almost invisible to those who didn't know to look. And yet, within those initials, a secret signature of the artist remained immortalized in every cent that left the mint. There were three primary mint locations producing the 1988 penny: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark, Denver coins bore a small D beneath the date, and the San Francisco issues carried an S, signifying their proof status, coins struck with extra care for collectors rather than for circulation. But what no one expected was that, decades later, a rare variation of the 1988 penny would emerge, a minting error so subtle that only the most trained eyes could recognize it. This variation, known among collectors as the 1988 double die or transitional design variety, revealed that some 1988 pennies were struck with a reverse design intended for the following year, 1989. The difference was microscopic, found in the shape of the letters and the details of the memorial. Yet that minute difference turned an ordinary cent into a treasure worth thousands, and in some speculative markets, millions. As decades passed, collectors began to realize that within bags, jars, and forgotten drawers of spare change, treasures might be hiding in plain sight. The 1988 penny, minted in the tens of billions, was not supposed to be rare. But like every story of rarity, it was the few mistakes, the few survivors, that defined its legend. Imagine an ordinary family in the Midwest, emptying a jar of pennies one evening. The light glints off one coin slightly differently, the lines of the memorial sharper, the letters subtly shifted. To the untrained eye, it's worth 1 cent, nothing more. But to a collector, that same coin could represent a fortune, a symbol of how tiny differences in metal and timing can change history's course. The legend of the $234 million penny was born not out of a single transaction, but from the swelling mythology that surrounds rare American coins. Over the years, stories began to circulate of unique 1988 coins selling for incredible sums, tales of auction houses whispering about prototype errors, unconfirmed test strikes, and mint engraver mistakes that never should have existed. Whether entirely factual or stretched by imagination, the idea took hold that somewhere out there, a single 1988 penny, flawless and unique, could hold the kind of value reserved for ancient artifacts or lost treasures. Behind that myth, however, lies a deeper truth: the allure of the penny itself. In a world increasingly dominated by digital transactions and disappearing cash, the penny stands as a relic of tangible history. Each 1988 cent was part of an era before the internet reshaped daily life, before smartphones replaced pocket change, before value became something stored in invisible data. Holding a penny from that year is like holding a moment of the late 20th century, a connection to every hand that passed it along, every purchase, every child's first savings. JAR.AS collectors and historians continued to investigate. They uncovered layers of fascination around the 1988 cent. The metallurgical precision, the die variations, the minting process itself, all became subjects of study. The penny was struck 150 times per minute, each press imprinting the face of Lincoln with extreme pressure and precision. Yet even in this precision, imperfections arose, small die cracks, tiny doubling in the letters "In God We Trust" or "Liberty," faint scratches or misaligned dies that, in hindsight, created accidental masterpieces. And then, there is the emotion. The part that no catalog or price guide can quantify. For many, the 1988 penny is the coin of memory. It reminds people of simpler times, when pennies were saved in piggy banks, rolled into paper sleeves, traded for candy, or dropped into fountains with wishes whispered beneath the breath. Each one holds the patina of use, the faint marks of countless exchanges, the tiny dents that tell silent stories. Over time, the market for coins like the 1988 penny has grown beyond hobbyists. Global collectors, investors, and even museums have begun to see American cents as part of a broader cultural artifact. When a rare variety surfaces, it is not merely a collector's delight, it's an event. Auctions have seen these coins, depending on condition and error, reach prices that defy logic. What was once 1 cent becomes thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in myths and speculative discussions, even more. Part of what fuels that fascination is grading, the meticulous art of evaluating a coin's condition. A 1988 penny that remains in pristine, uncirculated condition, free from scratches or discoloration, can fetch extraordinary prices. Grading companies assign numbers from 1 to 70, with the highest grade, mint state 70, reserved for coins that appear as perfect as the day they left the press. In that rarefied realm, even the most common coin transforms into something precious. As the years passed, the surviving high-grade 1988 cents dwindled. Circulation wore them down, pockets and cash drawers scratched them, time darkened their surfaces. Each passing decade made untouched specimens rarer. Those few that remained sealed, preserved in collector sets or proof cases, became silent witnesses to the march of time. Their surfaces reflected a bygone era, the end of the Cold War, the rise of home computing, the music, the culture, the optimism of the late 1980s, so the legend continued to grow. Somewhere in America, perhaps in a box in an attic, perhaps hidden among billions of ordinary cents, lies a coin that embodies that history, the 1988 penny, gleaming faintly, waiting for discovery. Its estimated market worth of $234 million is almost certainly exaggerated, but its symbolic worth, the worth of mystery, of hope, of nostalgia, cannot be measured in dollars. For every person who looks at a handful of change and wonders if a treasure might be hidden among the copper tones, the story of the 1988 cent lives on. This is more than just a coin. It is a reminder of how value is defined not only by metal but by meaning. The 1988 penny has become an icon of curiosity, a spark that drives millions of searches, YouTube videos, documentaries, and endless fascination. Each time someone learns that an old cent could be worth more than they ever imagined, the legacy of the penny strengthens. As Part 1 draws to its quiet conclusion, imagine the minting floor, the thunder of machinery, the endless rhythm of presses striking blank planchets into form, the metallic scent in the air, and the glow of fresh copper surfaces under factory lights. Somewhere within that symphony, one coin, perhaps one out of billions, emerged just slightly different, carrying with it a future of legend, and that is where our story begins. As the presses of the U.S. Mint continued their unending rhythm in 1988, the scent of metal and machine oil filled the air. Billions of planchets, small, round blanks of copper-plated zinc, awaited their transformation into coins that would journey through the hands of millions. The sound of clattering machinery echoed through vast minting halls in Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Workers in their uniforms oversaw rows of automated presses, ensuring that each strike carried the perfect impression of Lincoln's face and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Few among them could have imagined that one of these coins would someday capture the imagination of the world. The story of the 1988 penny is not just about its creation, but about the era that gave birth to it. The late 1980s in America was a time of transition, politically, economically, and cultural style. These differences were not visible to casual observers, they required magnification, patience, and knowledge. When numismatists compared these coins to later issues, they realized what had happened. A die intended for the 1989 reverse design had been used accidentally on some 1988 coins. A tiny oversight at the mint had birthed a rarity. This was no ordinary mint error. Transitional design varieties often occur during years when the mint updates its master dies. In this case, the reverse hub used for the 1989 design found its way into the production of 1988 coins, creating a blend of years, a coin that technically existed between 2 points in time. The 1988 penny with the 1989 reverse became a physical time traveler, a piece of evidence that even in the most controlled systems, human error and coincidence can intertwine. News of the discovery spread slowly at first. A few collectors whispered about it at coin shows. Dealers examined their bulk pennies with renewed interest. Then, as online forums and numismatic publications picked up the story, curiosity turned to obsession. People began searching through their change by the thousands, shining flashlights over coin jars, running magnets across surfaces, checking every detail. The 1988 penny had transformed from a simple coin into a mystery to solve, and then came the value, the element that electrified the story. When early auction records showed that these rare 1988 reverse of 1989 cents sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars depending on condition, the myth took root. It was only a matter of time before exaggerated stories began to swirl. A single coin, misidentified or misunderstood, could be rumored to have fetched tens of millions. The whispers grew until the figure of $234 million became symbolic, a mythical valuation representing the hope that a simple penny could change one's life forever. In truth, number 1988 penny has sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. But the legend persists because it represents something deeper than money, the dream that rare treasures still exist in ordinary places. It's a reflection of the same curiosity that drove people to pan for gold, to search for buried treasure, to explore lost ruins. The rare penny became the modern equivalent of those ancient quests. Imagine, for a moment, the journey of a single 1988 penny. Struck at the Denver Mint, it rolls from the press into a bin with thousands of others. It clinks against its neighbors as it's poured into a hopper, packaged into a box, and shipped to banks across the nation. Perhaps it lands in a grocery store register in Kansas, or a diner in Arizona. From there, it changes hands countless times, through purchases, tips, donations. It travels across years and states, gathering scratches, smudges, fingerprints. And then, decades later, someone picks it up, notices something unusual about the design, and realizes that this small piece of metal is unlike any other. That is the hidden beauty of numismatics, the science and art of coins. Every coin is a storyteller, carrying the imprint of its creation and the silent record of its travels. The 1988 penny embodies this perfectly. It's not just a currency, it's an artifact of precision, history, and chance. As experts studied the 1988 varieties, they catalogued every minute difference. On the obverse, the portrait of Lincoln showed the familiar details: his hair, his bow tie, the texture of his coat. The inscriptions read "In God We Trust" at the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 1988 to the right. Below the date, a small mint mark, D for Denver or P for Philadelphia, quietly indicated its origin. But it was the reverse that carried the key to the mystery. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse was a masterwork of fine engraving. Every column, every shadow, every step was cut with precision. Yet the 1988 reverse of 1989 coin revealed subtle shifts in the shapes of the letters in United States of America and E pluribus unum. These details, invisible without magnification, were evidence of the mint's evolving design process. To collectors, this was pure excitement, proof that the ordinary can hide extraordinary secrets. As time went on, more varieties appeared, small differences in die alignment, metal flow lines, and rim thickness. Some pennies had faint doubling, some had die cracks, some showed bubbled surfaces caused by zinc corrosion beneath the copper plating. Each imperfection told a story. In a sense, the 1988 penny became a gallery of tiny, unintentional artworks. While many collectors focused on the coin's physical traits, others became fascinated with their economic symbolism. The penny itself, worth 1 cent, represented the smallest unit of American currency, often overlooked, disregarded, or even thrown away. And yet, when examined closely, it could reveal immense value. This contrast between perception and reality made the story of the 1988 penny so compelling. It reminded people that worth is not always visible, that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest potential. Meanwhile, the U.S. Mint, unaware of the future fame these coins would achieve, continued its operations. The Denver Mint alone struck over 5 billion pennies in 1988. Philadelphia produced billions more, and San Francisco struck special proof sets for collectors. The total mintage was staggering, tens of billions of coins, each identical to the next. Or so it seemed. But within that ocean of copper-plated zinc, anomalies glimmered like hidden gems. The myth of the multi-million-dollar penny spread across news outlets, YouTube channels, and online communities. Videos emerged showing people discovering rare cents under magnifying lenses. Some spoke of pennies with doubled ears, others of transitional reverses, others of coins struck on bronze planchets by mistake. Every discovery fueled the growing excitement. In a way, the 1988 penny story became a reflection of hope that ordinary people could stumble upon extraordinary fortune. In garages, kitchens, and basements across America, families began sorting through jars of coins, their imaginations ignited by the idea that one of those small brown discs could hold unimaginable value. It became a modern treasure hunt, a nationwide mystery hiding in plain sight. As collectors know, value in numismatics is shaped by several factors: rarity, condition, demand, and historical context. The 1988 penny checks all these boxes in its own way. The transitional era makes it rare, the age makes pristine examples valuable, the demand from collectors keeps the market active, and its place in history gives it lasting significance. In recent years, certified grading companies have encapsulated thousands of these coins, carefully labeling them as 1988 reverse of 1989. When one appears at auction, bidders compete fiercely. The hammer falls, and a coin once worth 1 cent now fetches hundreds or thousands of dollars. But the true allure lies not in those transactions, but in the possibility that others still remain undiscovered, hidden among billions, waiting for a careful eye to reveal them. The 1988 penny story also connects to something much deeper: the human fascination with mistakes. We are drawn to imperfections because they make history tangible. A minting error is proof that even in the pursuit of perfection, humanity leaves its fingerprints. Each error coin is a time capsule, preserving a fleeting moment of human oversight and industrial precision colliding, and so, the 1988 penny lives on as more than just a coin. It's a symbol of change, discovery, and the endless pursuit of meaning in the smallest places. When you hold one in your hand, you hold not just a piece of metal, but a fragment of America's story, its industry, its art, its history, and its dreams. Even today, decades after those coins rolled off the minting presses, people continue to search for th. The world of coin collecting, once considered a quiet and specialized pursuit, began to stir with new life as the story of the 1988 penny spread. What had once been the domain of historians and lifelong hobbyists was now reaching millions through television documentaries, internet videos, and whispered tales of hidden fortune. In countless living rooms across the country, lights glowed late into the night as people poured their coins onto kitchen tables, the sound of clinking copper filling the air. Somewhere among them, perhaps, was the penny that could change everything. Professional grading companies had by this time become the gatekeepers of trust in the numismatic world. Names like PCGS, NGC, and Anax held the authority to turn speculation into certainty. Each coin that passed through their hands was carefully weighed, measured, examined under magnification, and sealed within a protective holder, labeled with its grade and details. To hold a certified coin was to hold a piece of verified history, and when the label read 1988 reverse of 1989, collectors' hearts beat faster. Within those small slabs of plastic and acrylic lay stories of discovery. Some came from estate sales where forgotten collections were rediscovered after decades. Others came from small-town banks or coin rolls that had sat untouched since the late 80s. Each new find was reported, documented, catalogued, and studied. Every discovery added a new thread to the growing tapestry of the 1988 penny legend. At coin shows across the United States, the conversation often returned to this one year. Dealers set out trays of gleaming cents under bright halogen lights. Visitors leaned in close, comparing reverses, tracing the shapes of letters with magnifying glasses. Under those lights, the color of copper shimmered from red to gold to brown, each tone telling its own story of age and preservation. Collectors spoke in quiet excitement about die states, mint errors, and transitional reverses. There was a shared sense of being part of something larger, a living mystery still unfolding, but behind the fascination lay an even deeper human story: the psychology of the treasure hunter. The idea that a coin worth a penny could hold unimaginable value appealed to something ancient within the human heart. It was the same instinct that drove explorers across oceans, miners into mountains, and dreamers into lotteries. Every handful of change became a landscape of possibility, every penny a potential relic. The 1988 cent embodied the timeless dream of discovery, the hope that extraordinary things hide within the ordinary. As the myth grew, so too did the market. Auction houses began listing verified 1988 transitional cents alongside legendary rarities like the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 doubled die. Photographs of the coins appeared in glossy catalogs, each detail described with reverence. When the auctioneer's hammer fell, the prices sometimes shocked even seasoned collectors. Thousands of dollars for what had once been a penny, proof that rarity and story could transform the mundane into the magnificent. Still, many who searched were not motivated by profit. For them, it was the joy of the hunt, the quiet satisfaction of holding history between their fingers. Some had inherited the hobby from parents or grandparents, tracing their fascination back through generations. Others were newcomers, drawn in by the excitement of viral stories and television specials. But all shared a common realization that the penny, the smallest of coins, was also the most enduring, and museums and private collections, exhibits began to highlight the evolution of the Lincoln cent. Panels showed the shift from bronze to zinc, from wheat ears to the Lincoln Memorial. The 1988 penny stood near the center of this timeline, a marker of change, bridging eras both technological and cultural. Visitors stood before the displays, studying magnified images of the reverse designs, marveling at how a single year could carry so much significance. Scholars, too, found meaning in this unassuming artifact. Economists pointed out how the penny reflected America's evolving relationship with money itself. By 1988, inflation had long since eroded its purchasing power, yet the coin persisted, a reminder of tradition and continuity. Historians saw in it the endurance of Lincoln's legacy, a symbol of unity and perseverance carried forward through generations. For metallurgists, the coin represented the intersection of science and art, copper plating over a zinc core, fused under immense pressure to form a surface both delicate and durable. In time, documentaries began to appear, tracing the penny's journey from mint to myth. Cameras moved through the cavernous halls of the Denver Mint, capturing the rhythmic thunder of presses and the glint of new coins spilling from chutes. Narrators spoke of the precision required, the margin of error measured in microns, and the unintentional beauty born when that precision faltered. Viewers watched as numismatists examined coins beneath microscopes, pointing out the differences between the reverses of 1988 and 1989, the angle of a letter, the curve of a memorial step. Details so minute yet so powerful in their implications. For those who searched, time itself seemed to blur. People who had once ignored pennies began to see them as keys to a hidden world. Children joined their parents in sorting through coin rolls, learning to recognize mint marks and subtle design changes. Online forums buzzed with images of finds, questions, and hopeful stories. Some found genuine rarities. Others found nothing but ordinary change, yet even that brought a quiet satisfaction, the knowledge that they had looked closely at something most people overlooked. Among collectors, discussions often turned philosophical. What makes a coin valuable? Is it the metal, the rarity, the story, or the belief we attach to it? The 1988 penny seemed to answer all those questions at once. It was rare, but not impossibly so. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary in its errors. And most importantly, it carried a story, a narrative of chance, craftsmanship, and the endless human search for meaning. As years passed, the legend of the $234 million penny became both myth and metaphor. No auction ever recorded such a sale, yet the number persisted, echoing through headlines and conversations as a symbol of ultimate discovery. The figure didn't need to be factual to be powerful, it represented possibility, the idea that something so small could be worth so much simply because of what it meant to people. Today, more than 3 decades after it was struck, the 1988 penny continues to circulate quietly through the world. Some rest in collector albums, their surfaces untouched by time. Others lie forgotten in jars or drawers, waiting for rediscovery. A few have already achieved fame, displayed in collections or sold at auctions. But billions more remain anonymous, moving from hand to hand, carrying with them the silent heartbeat of history. If you hold a 1988 penny and study it closely, you might notice the faint sheen of age, the small imperfections that mark its journey. Perhaps it will be ordinary. Perhaps it will be one of the rare ones. Either way, you'll be touching a piece of a story that has spanned decades, a story of human curiosity, craftsmanship, and the enduring magic of discovery. In every age, there are objects that capture imagination. For some, it is a gemstone, for others, a painting, a fossil, a relic. For coin collectors, it is often something as small as a cent, a piece of metal that bridges past and present. The 1988 penny stands among those objects, humble yet mysterious, common yet precious. It reminds us that history hides in plain sight, waiting for us to notice, and so the search continues. The next great discovery may already sit in someone's pocket, unnoticed, awaiting the moment when light and curiosity align. The myth of the $234 million penny will endure, not because of wealth, but because of wonder, the simple, enduring wonder that keeps people searching, hoping, and believing that even the smallest coin can tell the greatest story. The years moved forward, and yet, the small copper-colored coin of 1988 refused to fade from memory. As digital banking and plastic cards replaced the clink of pocket change, most people believed the age of coins was ending. But within collector circles, a new era was only beginning. The story of the 1988 penny, the 1-cent piece that carried whispers of minting mistakes and unimaginable value, was reborn through the power of technology. When the internet expanded into homes across the world, collectors found a new home for their passion. Online forums, once small and quiet, became bustling communities of curiosity. Digital microscopes replaced magnifying glasses. High-resolution photographs revealed every curve, line, and shadow of Lincoln's portrait. For the first time in history, millions could share their discoveries instantly, and the 1988 penny became a star in the global conversation. People began uploading videos to platforms like YouTube, holding their coins up to the light, explaining the tiny differences that might set their 1988 penny apart from the rest. The fascination spread far beyond numismatists. Families, students, and even casual viewers began searching drawers, boxes, and jars of old change. Every upload, every new story of a discovery, every claim of a rare find kept the legend alive. What had once been a quiet collector's mystery now became a cultural phenomenon, an ongoing treasure hunt that united people across continents. The myth of the $234 million penny resurfaced again and again. It was never about whether a single coin truly fetched that impossible figure. It was about the dream it symbolized, the idea that value can hide in plain sight, that fortune may rest in the palm of an unsuspecting hand. In countless languages, people told the same story, a simple cent, ordinary to everyone else, yet capable of transforming a life. The legend transcended borders and became part of collective imagination. Meanwhile, professional grading continued to refine the science of coin authentication. Machines capable of scanning the surface at microscopic levels emerged. Computerized grading systems analyzed luster, strike sharpness, and imperfections invisible to human eyes. Every new technology brought renewed interest in old coins, and the 1988 cent stood near the heart of this revival. When new examples of the transitional reverse surfaced, they were documented in online databases with precision unimaginable in earlier decades. The numismatic world, once confined to printed catalogs and handwritten notes, had entered the digital age. Auction houses adapted as well. Instead of crowded rooms filled with bidders clutching paddles, online auctions opened the doors to global participation. Collectors from every corner of the world could compete for a single rare coin. When a pristine 1988 reverse of 1989 penny appeared for sale, screens glowed with anticipation. The final bid prices, sometimes exceeding tens of thousands of dollars, sparked renewed excitement. The numbers mattered less than the stories. Each sale was another chapter in a saga that had begun on the minting floors decades earlier. The 1988 penny became a teacher of patience and precision. In classrooms, educators used it to explain the history of the U.S. Mint, the artistry of engraving, and the role of manufacturing technology. Historians saw in it a reflection of the late 20th century, a time of change, innovation, and quiet revolutions in design and process. Economists used it as an example of perceived value, a study of how rarity and narrative combine to shape markets. And to ordinary people, it became a symbol of curiosity, proof that even in the smallest things, wonder still exists. Collectors often speak of the moment of discovery, the instant when a coin under magnification reveals something unexpected. For those who have found the rare 1988 variety, that moment is unforgettable. The world seems to pause as realization dawns, the letters, the memorial, the small differences aligning with the stories they've read. The thrill is not only in knowing the coin is valuable, but in feeling a connection to something larger than oneself, to history, craftsmanship, and the enduring spirit of human curiosity. As new generations enter the world of collecting, the 1988 penny has become a bridge between past and present. Young enthusiasts who never handled large amounts of change in daily life are learning to appreciate the artistry of coins. They use digital microscopes connected to computers, capturing close-up images of every detail. On social media, they share their findings, tag experts, and seek validation. This new wave of collectors ensures that the legend will never truly fade, but beyond technology, beyond profit and markets, lies the deeper meaning of the 1988 penny. It represents time itself, each coin a tiny record of a year, a place, a set of human hands. It carries the face of Lincoln, a man who fought for unity, whose image has outlasted wars, recessions, and revolutions. The 1988 penny, in all its variations, embodies the persistence of that legacy, the enduring belief that even in the smallest symbol, history continues to breathe. Imagine now the path of one single penny, minted in Denver, gleaming and new, slipping through decades of use. It might have been handed to a child as change for a candy bar in 1988. It might have sat in a cashier's drawer, traveled through banks, crossed state lines, survived recessions, and still rests today in a forgotten jar. Somewhere, perhaps, one of those pennies carries the reverse of 1989, the secret signature of error, the silent mark of uniqueness. Waiting, patiently, for someone to look closely enough to notice, and therein lies the beauty of this story. The 1988 penny invites people to slow down, to look closely, to appreciate details. It reminds us that meaning often hides beneath the surface, that discovery comes to those who take time to see. In a fast-moving world, that message resonates more deeply than ever. Collectors often say, coins don't just tell history, they are history. Every dent, scratch, and imperfection tells a story of use, of time, of people. The 1988 penny, small as it is, tells one of the grandest stories of all, a tale of change, chance, and enduring wonder. It proves that mystery can live within metal, that artistry can survive in the humblest of forms, and that the human imagination can turn even a penny into a legend. As the camera pans across old minting footage, gleaming dies, tumbling coins, the hum of machinery, the narration fades to the whisper of possibility. Somewhere in the vastness of circulation, among billions of ordinary coins, the extraordinary still exists. Perhaps in a forgotten drawer, perhaps in the palm of a child, perhaps in your own pocket. The 1988 penny waits, its story is not over. As the 21st century unfolded, the legend of the 1988 penny refused to sleep. What began as whispers among collectors now moved through the veins of the digital world. Social media gave the small copper coin a new stage. It appeared in reels, shorts, and live streams. Influencers who once reviewed phones or gadgets now held magnifying glasses to the camera, turning a quiet hobby into a global spectacle. The coin was no longer just a relic of minting history, it had become a character in the story of human fascination itself. Across screens, voices rose in excitement. They told tales of garage discoveries, attic finds, and pocket miracles. People clicked and watched, captivated by the hope that they too might uncover the impossible. The 1988 penny became a symbol of discovery in a world driven by speed and noise. Its quiet glint on camera reminded viewers that value can hide in simplicity, that wealth may rest not in newness but in what endures. Museums and archives noticed the surge of interest. Institutions that had long displayed ancient coins began dedicating sections to the modern era, to Lincoln's image and to the subtle artistry of the 1980s minting techniques. Scholars revisited die varieties, studying each curve of the memorial building, each line on Lincoln's shoulder. They uncovered new data, refined identification guides, and documented every nuance in updated catalogs. Every new publication, every verified discovery added another layer to the living myth of the 1988 cent. In Denver, where many of those pennies were born, retired workers from the mint recalled the hum of presses and the rhythm of production. Some smiled as they remembered those long days, unaware that the coins they produced would one day stir global fascination. Others admitted to a quiet pride that their ordinary work had touched something eternal. Their memories became threads in the documentary of time, linking human labor to legacy. The market responded to the fascination with surges and tremors. Auction platforms saw spikes in searches for 1988 pennies. Prices fluctuated wildly, sometimes modest, sometimes shocking, driven by viral stories and new discoveries. Collectors debated in forums late into the night, examining photographs, comparing mint marks, discussing die states. A new vocabulary emerged among enthusiasts: reverse types, alignment angles, microanomalies. The pursuit of the perfect specimen became a modern-day odyssey. Amid the buzz, professional grading services became the gatekeepers of truth. Sealed plastic holders, labeled with precise details, turned small coins into certified treasures. A 1988 penny graded at the highest level of perfection could command astonishing prices, not merely for its rarity but for what it represented, the merging of human history with modern precision. Every slabbed coin told a dual story, of the mint that created it and the technology that preserved it. Economists began to notice a curious trend. The fascination with coins, especially small denominations like the penny, paralleled the human desire for tangible history. In a world of digital currency, cryptocurrency, and contactless transactions, people found comfort in something they could hold, something that carried the weight of real metal and the fingerprints of time. The 1988 penny thus became more than a collectible, it became a metaphor for grounding in an increasingly virtual world. Media networks soon followed the public's curiosity. Documentaries aired on streaming platforms, interviewing experts, collectors, and historians. They filmed close-ups of the coin's copper glow under studio lights, narrating its journey from minting machines to private vaults. Viewers who had never thought about coins before found themselves captivated by the intersection of art, error, and chance. The story spread further still, translated into dozens of languages. The penny's tale crossed borders more freely than any currency ever could, and yet, the emotional center of the story always returned to the individual searcher, the person with a handful of change and a spark of hope. In kitchens and garages, people lined up coins on tables, sorting through them carefully. The faint scent of metal and the quiet clink of copper became sounds of adventure. Some found nothing but ordinary coins. Others found small anomalies, a doubled letter, a shifted mark, a smoother memorial. Each discovery, real or imagined, kept the flame alive. Among those countless stories, one truth endured: the worth of the 1988 penny was not measured solely in dollars, even in the rumored hundreds of millions. Its true value lived in imagination, in curiosity rekindled. It had become a lens through which people looked at history, technology, and themselves. In chasing the coin, they were chasing connection, to the past, to craft, to the joy of finding meaning in overlooked corners of life. Museums began to host interactive exhibits where visitors could scan their own coins. Digital displays magnified tiny details into sweeping landscapes on giant screens. Children pressed their faces close, amazed that something so small could hold so many stories. The curators spoke softly, explaining how each design decision, each minting error, echoed choices made by human hands decades earlier. The crowd would listen in reverent silence, as though standing before a time capsule made of metal. And collectors' conventions, where glass cases shimmered under bright lights, the 1988 cent drew attention like a beacon. Conversations sparked over cups of coffee, stories traded like treasures. Some collectors described near-mythical finds, others shared tales of disappointment. But all were united by a sense of wonder. It was as if the coin itself radiated an invisible energy, the pull of history calling out to be noticed. Every time a new rumor surfaced, that one had sold for an unimaginable figure, that another had been discovered in an old collection, the legend grew a little larger. The $234 million number became part of the folklore, repeated not as a fact but as a symbol of limitless potential. It represented the dream that somewhere, value beyond imagination might still lie hidden in plain sight. In this age of algorithms and instant answers, the persistence of such myths is rare. Yet the 1988 penny thrives precisely because it resists simplification. It is at once ordinary and extraordinary, common yet unique, past and present intertwined. Its story cannot be pinned down to a single price tag or discovery. It lives in every new set of eyes that looks upon it and wonders. As night falls over cities and towns, and the hum of daily life softens, the world's coins rest in drawers, purses, and pockets. Among them, the 1988 penny waits, quiet, unchanged, patient. It carries with it the memory of presses that thundered in Denver, the laughter of collectors who first noticed its secrets, and the hope of millions who still believe that discovery is possible. In its silence lies a lesson, that greatness often hides in humility. That even a 1-cent coin can hold the weight of time, art, and dreams. And as long as someone, somewhere, continues to search, its story will never truly end. By the time the second decade of the 21st century began to fade, the 1988 penny had already crossed from numismatic curiosity into the fabric of modern culture. What was once a small disc of copper and zinc, struck by machines and forgotten in pockets, now lived in art galleries, film scenes, and social media icons. It had become a symbol of endurance, of hidden worth, of quiet stories that refused to vanish, designers began to notice its potential. The deep, time-softened hue of aged copper appeared in advertising palettes and brand logos. Stylists compared the color to memory itself, warm, human, and unpretentious. On posters and album covers, a single penny glowed under dramatic lighting, whispering themes of luck, struggle, and value reclaimed. Movie directors used it as a visual metaphor, a character holding a coin before a life-changing choice, a penny spinning in slow motion as a moment of fate unfolded. Viewers rarely noticed the date, yet for those who did, the year 1988 felt like a deliberate secret, a nod to those who knew the legend. And one art installation in New York, thousands of pennies were arranged on a vast mirrored floor. Hidden among them were a few 1988s. Visitors walked barefoot, feeling the chill of metal beneath their feet, reminded that currency, art, and time all share the same language. In another city, a digital artist rendered the 1988 cent in three-dimensional form, its surface mapped with microscopic precision. As viewers zoomed in, Lincoln's profile fractured into abstract landscapes of copper and light, a meditation on how something ordinary could reveal infinity when examined closely enough. Pop musicians referenced it in lyrics about change and destiny. Fashion brands used its imagery to evoke Americana and authenticity. Even small businesses embraced the story, cafes naming drinks after the coin, local shops displaying enlarged replicas near their registers, suggesting good fortune for whoever noticed. What began as a collector's fascination now moved through daily life as a quiet, recognizable emblem of possibility. Meanwhile, collectors and storytellers collaborated online to preserve every version of the legend. Podcasts recounted the origins of the rare varieties, narrating them like detective stories. Animators recreated the minting process, each clank of the die synchronized to music, transforming mechanical labor into art. Documentarians filmed interviews with people whose lives had been changed by coins, a man who funded his daughter's education by selling a rare cent, a woman who found a valuable error coin in her late father's collection and felt as if he had left her a final message. Through these stories, the 1988 penny grew a new heart, emotional, human, eternal. As technology evolved, digital artists began minting NFTs shaped after the 1988 penny, merging physical heritage with the virtual economy. The contrast was poetic, the oldest form of money meeting the newest. Each virtual coin shimmered with coded metadata, echoing the year, the mint mark, the legend "In God We Trust." For some, it was a simple collectible, for others, it was a symbol of continuity between generations of value seekers. The irony that a coin worth 1 cent in 1988 could inspire digital tokens worth thousands amused the world. It was proof that meaning, not metal, defines worth. Historians analyzing this wave of fascination saw more than coincidence. They saw a cultural yearning for touch, for authenticity. The 1988 penny, still small enough to rest on a fingertip, represented permanence in an era of fleeting screens. It told people that history could be held, that progress need not erase the past. Every time a new article or video appeared online, viewership soared. People didn't just want information, they wanted to feel part of something timeless. Some film studios even began using real 1988 pennies as props, embedding them into storylines as silent witnesses to transformation. A young protagonist might pick one up from a street corner just before their life changed forever. To the untrained eye, it was random. To those who knew, it was a hidden signature of hope, the filmmaker's quiet salute to the legend of hidden fortune. Collectors noticed the ripple effects in the market. Prices for high-grade examples remained strong, but something subtler happened. Even ordinary 1988 cents gained sentimental worth. People began saving them again, slipping them into envelopes labeled lucky. Parents passed them to children as keepsakes. Couples placed them in wedding boxes. The coin had transcended economics, it had become ritual. In small towns across America, coin shows returned with renewed energy. Under bright hall lights, dealers placed their best specimens on black velvet trays. Crowds leaned in, whispering, pointing, marveling. The stories they told were half history, half folklore, yet the emotion behind them was real. The air carried that unmistakable mixture of metal, dust, and wonder. Somewhere among the cases, a perfect 1988 penny gleamed, its mirrored surface reflecting the faces of dreamers. Outside those halls, artists kept reimagining it. A mural in Chicago painted the penny larger than life, Lincoln's face emerging from ripples of copper waves, the date 1988 shining like a beacon. Tourists photographed it, tagging posts with captions about hope, change, and destiny. In Tokyo, a sculptor created a minimalist installation of a single oversized coin balanced on its edge, a metaphor for history forever poised between chance and choice. Even academia embraced the phenomenon. Universities hosted lectures titled The Mythology of the Modern Coin, tracing how the 1988 cent became an icon of the digital age. Professors compared it to ancient talismans, objects once thought to contain luck or divine favor. The difference, they said, was that the modern myth traveled faster. In weeks, a story could circle the globe. In months, a penny could become legend, and somewhere, amid the noise of viral videos and online auctions, the simple truth of the 1988 penny remained unchanged. It was still a small piece of metal, bearing the same weight, the same dimensions, the same face of Abraham Lincoln. Its essence had not altered, only human perception had. Yet that perception gave it life beyond measure. As the documentary lens widens, we see countless hands turning the same coin, generations apart. The light reflects differently on each palm, a child's curiosity, an artist's inspiration, an elder's memory. The narrator's voice softens, acknowledging what the penny has come to mean. It is no longer just a currency unit. It is a mirror of humanity's endless desire to find meaning in the ordinary, to make legends out of the overlooked. The camera lingers on the coin one last time. It spins slowly, copper catching the sun, until it settles flat. The year 1988 glints in focus. For a heartbeat, it feels as if time itself pauses to honor the small artifact that bridged decades, technologies, and dreams. Its story continues, in art, in hearts, in the quiet shimmer of every pocket where 1 cent still waits to be discovered. The penny rests in silence, its copper face dulled by time, and yet there is something infinite in that silence. It asks no questions, offers no answers, but it endures. The 1988 1-cent coin, like all things that survive their original purpose, has become more than currency. It has become a meditation. Every scratch is a syllable in a language that speaks of touch, of exchange, of the passage of hands through years that cannot return. When people hold it now, they feel more than metal. They feel the weight of time compacted into something tangible. A single cent that once bought nothing more than a fragment of value now holds the immensity of memory. It reminds us that worth is not a number but a story. Money begins as utility and ends as meaning. Somewhere between those two poles lies humanity's quiet obsession with permanence. Copper, the coin's lifeblood, is itself a paradox. It corrodes and yet never truly dies. It darkens, gathers the fingerprints of life, and in doing so becomes more beautiful. The 1988 penny, exposed to air, skin, and motion, changes color just as people do. It ages with grace, a mirror of its owner's journeys. What began as industrial metal becomes intimate relic. And perhaps that is the secret of its power. It lives the same cycle as we do: birth, use, wear, remembrance, and every culture, objects have been vessels for memory. The Greeks carved myths into marble, the Egyptians inscribed eternity on stone, and the modern world struck its faith in progress onto metal discs. The penny is one of humanity's simplest prayers, a wish that something small might outlast the moment. The 1988 cent, minted in a decade of change, carries that wish quietly across generations. It speaks to our fear of being forgotten and our hope of leaving something behind. Collectors often describe their passion as listening to history whisper. Under magnification, the tiniest imperfections become voices. A faint doubling of a letter, a minute shift in the die alignment, these are not flaws but evidence of life. The machine faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that imperfection, individuality was born. Philosophers might say that the rarest coins are the ones that most resemble us, imperfect, unrepeatable, precious because they deviate from the expected. The 1988 penny teaches patience. In a world of instant gratification, it asks us to look closer, slower. Its surface does not reveal its secrets at first glance. One must sit with it, turn it under light, learn to read the language of texture and shadow. The act becomes almost spiritual, an exercise in seeing. It reminds us that discovery is not a matter of luck but of attention, and perhaps that is why the legend of its immense value resonates so deeply. People are not truly chasing money, they are chasing meaning. The rumored hundreds of millions are a symbol, a translation of longing into numbers. Each person who searches through jars of change is really searching for proof that wonder still exists, that the mundane can still yield miracles. The 1988 penny has become an emblem of that search, a promise that the extraordinary hides within the ordinary. There is a strange humility in the coin's endurance. It survives not because it demands attention, but because it waits. In drawers, in soil, in the folds of wallets, it endures the indifference of the world. It never protests its own obscurity. It simply remains. And by remaining, it transcends the fleeting trends of value. When currencies change and technologies fade, it will still be there, a small, silent, complete. If one could listen closely enough, perhaps every penny would tell a different story. The one spent on a morning coffee decades ago. The one slipped into a wishing fountain. The one pressed into a child's palm as a token of luck. These stories form an invisible network of human connection, and at its heart, the 1988 penny gleams like a node of memory. It unites strangers through touch and time. The philosopher might say that value is a mirror. Whatever we believe in most strongly reflects back at us through what we choose to treasure. When we honor a coin, we honor continuity, the idea that some things can still be held. In that small circle of copper, we find resistance against the abstraction of modern life. It tells us that not everything can be uploaded or erased. Some things must simply be held in the palm, felt, and passed on. The 1988 penny also carries a quiet lesson about humility. For all the talk of million-dollar auctions and rare varieties, its truest worth lies in its anonymity. It is one among billions, and yet it may outlast every name spoken in its year. The universe does not measure greatness by scale but by endurance. A star burns out, a penny remains. Perhaps that is its secret defiance. The persistence of the small.as night settles over cities and the hum of commerce quiets. Somewhere a single coin glints beneath a lamplight. Its date still reads the same, its face unchanged. The hands that minted it are gone, the machines dismantled, the paper trails forgotten. Yet the coin abides. It waits to be found, to be remembered, to be given meaning again. That is the quiet immortality of metal, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that endures, and so, the 1988 penny becomes a meditation on existence itself. Every rotation of its edge, every reflection of light, echoes the cycles of life, creation, use, decay, and rediscovery. It reminds us that even when something seems obsolete, it can still carry truth. In its worn surface lies the philosophy of survival, to remain simple, to carry purpose, to accept time not as an enemy but as a companion. In the end, perhaps that is the coin's greatest lesson, that worth is not found in what we possess but in what we perceive. To look at a penny and see history is to awaken the imagination. To see possibility in something forgotten is to practice hope. The 1988 cent endures because it teaches this without words, through the quiet authority of its being. As the camera fades to black, the narrator's voice lowers to a whisper. Somewhere, the faint sound of a coin rolling across a table echoes into stillness. It stops, settles, and glints once more. A reminder. A reflection. A promise that even the smallest things can hold the infinite. Time moves, and people move with it, yet certain things remain behind like footprints that never fade. Among these quiet remnants are the coins we leave in drawers, boxes, and jars. They do not speak, yet they remember us. The 1988 1-cent coin has become one of those small vessels of remembrance, passed unknowingly through generations, carrying invisible traces of lives it has touched. A father in the late 80s may have handed one to his child at a grocery counter, teaching the meaning of value through an object barely worth a candy. That same coin might now rest in the child's collection. Decades later, the copper darkened but the lesson bright. It has witnessed laughter, routine, and the soft erosion of time. Families rarely realize they are curating museums of memory inside their homes, yet every jar of change is an archive of days once lived. In many households, the 1988 penny has begun to take on the role once held by photographs or heirlooms. People seal them in small envelopes, label them with family names, and write notes about where they came from. It isn't the monetary worth that matters, it's the continuity. To hand someone a coin is to say, "This touched the world before you did, let it touch you now." Grandparents tell stories as they pass one down. They speak of a time when every purchase required touch, when coins carried the smell of pockets and the sound of clinking drawers. To younger ears, these memories sound almost mythical, like echoes from an older civilization. Yet the coin in their palm proves that it was all real. That bridge between generations is the quiet miracle of such small artifacts. Collectors understand this better than most. They are not merely chasing rarity, they are rescuing fragments of shared memory. Each 1988 penny they preserve represents a moment reclaimed from forgetting. They clean them gently, photograph them carefully, catalog them like old friends. In doing so, they extend the coin story far beyond its intended lifespan. Some even leave notes for the future, messages sealed with their collections so that whoever opens them decades from now will know why these humble pieces of copper were cherished. In a world that forgets quickly, such gestures are acts of resistance. The 1988 penny becomes a counter-narrative to disposability. It reminds us that permanence still has meaning, that the smallest things can anchor us to history. When a family keeps one, they are really keeping a connection to ancestors, to craftsmanship, to the belief that something made by human hands can outlast human lives. The coin also becomes a witness to change. As decades shift, so does the meaning of ownership. Digital numbers now replace physical exchange, money moves invisibly through circuits. Yet a single coin, solid and cool against the skin, reminds people of the tangible world. In that sense, it becomes a meditation tool, grounding the mind in touch and texture. Some collectors speak of holding a coin simply to feel time slow down. They say that looking at its details brings calm, as if copper itself holds the memory of patience. There is poetry in how these coins travel. One might leave a family's hands through accident, be spent at a store, vanish into circulation for years, and then reappear in another family's possession. Each journey adds invisible layers of human presence. To trace those movements is impossible, yet to imagine them is enough. The 1988 penny thus becomes a metaphor for connection, threads of unseen continuity woven through countless lives. In the late hours of night, a collector may sit at a desk, lamplight pooling across the table, magnifier in hand. They tilt the penny back and forth, watching reflections dance. For a moment, they feel they are not alone. They are joined by everyone who has ever looked at the same design: engravers, minters, shopkeepers, children, historians. The distance between years collapses into a single shared act of seeing. Museums have begun to document this emotional legacy. Curators interview families about the stories behind their saved pennies, recording how objects create lineage. One story tells of a mother who kept a 1988 cent in her purse throughout her life, believing it brought luck. When she passed, her daughter carried it onward, feeling her presence in the small familiar shape. Another tells of a man who found one in his late father's toolbox and realized it was the same coin given to him as a child. These are not tales of wealth but of continuity, of memory woven into matter. Sociologists who study material culture have begun calling such items microheirlooms. They are proof that inheritance does not need grandeur. The 1988 penny is a perfect example, modest, common, yet filled with emotion. Its endurance suggests that value is not measured by cost but by connection. In 100 years, when digital records may have vanished and data corrupted, some small copper coins will still remain, carrying names, dates, and traces of warmth. The film lens lingers on a montage of hands: an elderly man turning the coin between wrinkled fingers, a child tracing Lincoln's outline, a young woman placing it in a locket. The voice of the narrator softens, almost reverent, as if speaking a prayer over continuity itself. These hands change, but the coin endures. And in its endurance, memory finds form. The 1988 penny's beauty lies in its ordinariness. It belongs to everyone. There is no gate, no ownership that excludes. Anyone might find one tomorrow and become part of its living story. This universality is what turns it from a commodity into a collective heirloom. Across continents and generations, it serves as a reminder that history belongs not only to institutions but to individuals, to the pockets, palms, and purses of daily life. When future historians look back, they might not see just a coin. They might see a bridge of copper spanning centuries of human feeling. They might recognize that a civilization's soul can be read not in its monuments but in its smallest artifacts. The penny teaches this lesson silently, without ceremony. The final image of this part fades to a quiet scene, a small box on a wooden shelf, labeled with care. Inside, among photographs and letters, lies a single 1988 cent, darkened by time. It glints faintly as light passes through the window. Outside, the world keeps moving, but inside that moment, history stands still. Every civilization leaves behind its relics. Some are grand, temples carved from stone, palaces reaching toward the sun, monuments built to defy oblivion. Others are humble, a clay pot, a shard of glass, or a single copper coin. The difference lies not in the material but in the meaning we attach to it. When archaeologists of the far future dig into the dust of our age, they might not find marble pillars or golden crowns. They might find a penny, stamped with the face of a long-remembered president, and wonder who we were. The 1988 1-cent coin, by its smallness, captures something immense. It holds the essence of everyday life, the weight of countless unnoticed gestures, the rhythm of buying and giving, of saving and losing. Each penny that passed through a hand became part of the human story, a fragment of shared behavior repeated billions of times. There is quiet grandeur in that repetition, in the ordinary rituals that shape civilizations. Think of how history often celebrates kings and wars, inventions and revolutions, but rarely the unrecorded details that sustain them. The penny stands for those forgotten acts. Every handshake at a market, every exchange of goods, every lesson in counting money at a school desk, all of these lived within the pulse of coins like the 1988 cent. It is, in a way, the heartbeat of a society that valued touch, that measured trust in tangible weight. In museums centuries from now, the penny might rest behind glass, admired by curious eyes who have never held money at all. Perhaps they will live in an age where currency is pure data, light pulsing through invisible channels, and the idea of metal money feels as ancient as hieroglyphs. When they stare at this small disk of copper-plated zinc, they may feel a strange nostalgia for a world they never knew. They might imagine the sound it made when dropped into a jar, the gleam of light across its surface, the faint echo of human touch it once carried. The narrator's voice slows, heavy with the weight of time. This coin was never meant to last forever, it says, and yet, like so many unintended miracles, it has outlived its purpose to become something else entirely. The transformation from currency to artifact is a quiet metamorphosis. It happens not in laboratories or factories, but in the hearts of people who choose to keep rather than spend. One moment, a penny is a tool of commerce, the next, it is a token of memory. That decision, to preserve, is what gives objects immortality. The 1988 cent lives on because people cared enough to see meaning in it. Collectors, historians, and even casual finders have turned the coin into a vessel for storytelling. They speak not of its monetary worth, but of the feeling it evokes, the link to another time, the echo of a vanished era. Each preserved coin becomes a small rebellion against forgetfulness. And when multiplied across millions of people, that rebellion forms a collective act of remembrance. Perhaps that is what gives the coin its strange, almost mythic status in the modern collector's imagination. The tale of a single penny being worth hundreds of millions of dollars is less about greed and more about the dream of discovery, the hope that something overlooked can reveal extraordinary value. It mirrors the human spirit itself, ordinary on the surface, but filled with hidden depths. The story of the 1988 penny has become a mirror through which we glimpse ourselves. We see our longing for permanence, our fear of loss, our desire to find meaning in what remains. The coin is both symbol and witness. It was present in a time when people still carried money as a token of exchange, a tactile link between strangers. It was present when machines began to replace touch with screens, when the world became fast and invisible. It carries both eras within its small frame, the human and the digital, the tangible and the abstract. Philosophers of material culture often say that objects do not age, they accumulate time. The 1988 penny does not grow old, it gathers history. Each scratch, each worn letter, each fading detail tells a story of motion. It passed through hands that loved, worked, hoped, struggled, and dreamed. It absorbed the atmosphere of an entire century's turn. And in doing so, it transcended its role as mere money. The camera pans over endless fields, cities, and rivers, a world changing rapidly. Yet somewhere, in a drawer or under a cushion, a small coin rests undisturbed. It has no idea how valuable it has become, no understanding of its legend. But it remains, quietly asserting that continuity still exists in a world obsessed with change. The narrator reflects, perhaps that is the greatest worth of all, not the price assigned by markets or collectors, but the proof that something simple can survive everything that tries to erase it. The penny is, in this light, not just an American artifact but a human one. Every civilization has its small, unassuming symbols that outlast their makers: shells, stones, beads, bits of metal. They are the fossils of intention, proof that people once cared enough to shape the world with their hands. The 1988 cent joins this lineage of lasting simplicity. In ancient ruins, archaeologists sometimes find coins with faces long forgotten, names no one can pronounce, and dates that mean nothing to the modern eye. Yet in those relics, the spark of human presence remains. Someday, perhaps long after the United States has changed beyond recognition, the 1988 penny may serve the same purpose, a fragment of a vanished nation, an artifact whispering, "We were here." It's humbling to think that something so small could speak for so many. It suggests that history does not belong only to those who build monuments, but also to those who hold on to moments. The coin in a pocket may one day become the story of an entire people. As the music swells softly, the scene transitions, a slow montage of hands from different generations, different skin tones, each passing a penny to another. No words, only the sound of breathing, of heartbeat, of life continuing. The coin gleams, dull and warm, its reflection blurring the line between past and future. The voice returns, almost whispering, in the end, it was never about wealth. It was about remembrance. It was about the quiet faith that something small can matter forever. The light fades to black. The sound of a single coin rolling on a wooden surface lingers, then silence. The camera fades in slowly from black. A glint of copper catches the morning light. A single 1988 penny rests on a wooden table, its surface worn smooth by decades of contact, its edges softened by time. Around it, dust floats through the air like tiny constellations. The world outside is awake, traffic hums, people hurry, lives unfold, yet here, in the quiet stillness of this moment, everything slows to the rhythm of memory. The narrator speaks softly, the voice of reflection rather than authority. It began as a coin, 1 cent of value, minted by machines, pressed by human intention. It traveled across hands, through lives, through the pulse of an entire century. It was used, spent, saved, forgotten. And yet, through all its motion, it never lost what it was meant to carry, the simple idea that worth can exist even in the smallest of things. Time, the narrator continues, has a way of transforming what we overlook. What was once ordinary becomes sacred simply by surviving. The 1988 penny has done what few objects can. It has crossed from commerce into legend, from utility into story. Its surface may bear scratches, but its soul, the invisible bond it forged between people, remains untouched. Images drift across the screen, an elderly collector carefully opening a velvet box, a child peering through a magnifying lens, a gloved hand lifting a coin under museum lights. Each image blends into the next, like memories bleeding together in a dream. The coin becomes a thread connecting generations, a physical echo of a collective heartbeat. The narrator whispers, every touch left a trace. Every person who held it left behind a moment of their life. And so, the coin became a vessel, a small, unknowing archive of humanity itself. It is strange, almost mystical, how meaning hides in plain sight. In the 1988 penny's copper skin lies a reflection of civilization, its creativity, its restlessness, its longing for permanence. The design, Lincoln's steady gaze, the memorial behind him, captures a paradox, a leader remembered for freedom etched onto an object of currency. A reminder that ideas, too, circulate, that values can be passed hand to hand like coins. The voice deepens slightly. Maybe that is why we hold on to it. Because somewhere inside, we know that what we create, no matter how small, can outlive us. The coin becomes a mirror of our mortality and our defiance of it. We fade. But what we make endures. The scene shifts to a wide aerial shot, cities glowing at night, highways winding like veins, people moving beneath neon and sky. Somewhere in that immensity, billions of pennies rest in drawers, jars, soil, pockets, each one carrying a story. The film slows, isolating one, the 1988 cent, and follows it as if time itself were retracing its path. We see glimpses of decades gone by, a cashier's counter in 1988, a child buying candy in 1993, a collector finding it at a yard sale in 2015. Each scene dissolves into the next, forming a mosaic of human continuity. The narrator continues, voice hushed and reverent. The 1988 penny has traveled through our history like a quiet observer. It has seen the rise of the digital age, the fall of factories, the changing of hands, the fading of touch. Yet it remains. A constant in an age that forgot how to stay still. There is a kind of poetry in that endurance. A coin worth 1 cent, the smallest denomination, outlasting technologies, trends, even the concept of cash itself. It is proof that permanence doesn't depend on importance. Sometimes it depends on patience, on resilience, on being small enough to slip through the cracks of change. The camera closes in on the coin again. The letters "In God We Trust" glimmer faintly. The narrator pauses, then says softly, perhaps that trust was never only about faith in something divine, but faith in what we make together, in symbols, in continuity, in memory. The light shifts to a warm golden hue. We see hands of different ages passing the coin along, each gesture slower than the last. It lands finally in the palm of a young child, who holds it up to the sun. The gleam in the child's eyes mirrors the copper glow. The narrator's tone softens to a whisper. And so it begins again. A new hand. A new story. Silence follows. Then, a faint echo of a coin spinning on a table, ringing briefly before coming to rest. The film's final minutes unfold like a meditation, slow shots of nature and time. Waves rolling onto shore. Leaves drifting across pavement. A train passing in the distance. Over each image, the voice returns one last time. Everything we create carries a memory of us. Buildings fall, empires fade, but the small things remain. A coin, a word, a gesture. They move quietly through centuries, gathering meaning as they go. And in their journey, they remind the future that we were here, that we believed in value, in craft, in the dignity of the ordinary. The screen darkens gradually, until only the faint outline of the 1988 penny remains, floating against black like a small red planet. The narrator's last line arrives almost as a sigh. It was never just a coin. It was a promise, pressed in copper, that even the smallest mark relief can shine forever. Music swells, soft strings, the slow rising hum of time itself. The image fades completely to black, the credits roll silently. Only the sound of a distant clink, one coin falling among many, lingers as the world exhales and the story ends.